I got a text message early this morning as this person was driving to work at about 7:30 in the morning. Why they were sending pictures while they were in heavy traffic, I'm not certain. But for the rest of the day, I would hear this. This is the paragraph that I wrote about the way that they feel about their life and how ChatGPT interpreted this. By the way, did you know that ChatGPT can have a conversation with you? I found out the hard way today while I was sitting there with Gen Zero talking to him about some irrelevant thing, and suddenly it started talking to me like it was another person. Anyhow, let's get into what I wrote. I don't really like any of my current friends. Most of them act trashy because they're poor. I don't like the way they steal my things, the way they act as if poverty is something they can roll around in. Yet these are the people in my income bracket, the people I don't want to be around, but the only friends that I can afford. That's what really sucks about being a pro. You don't want to be one. You look at the expensive homes and the fun they get to have, vacations, wealth, status while you work in retail. Come home and realize that the only thing to do is play the same video games, remakes, that you've been playing since you were a kid. It hurts to be poor. The worst part is there's no escape. Your trashy friends will ask you to hang out this Friday or on the weekend, and you'll end up getting it on in the back seat of your crappy car because you're ashamed of where you live. You have no job security, your life's a joke, and you're supposed to be happy with this hot mess that you live in. To that, ChatGPT wrote as a talking point, poverty forces people into friendships of convenience rather than of compatibility. These relationships often stem from necessity, sharing resources, venting frustration, or simply not wanting to face the struggle alone. However, this survival mode can lead to unhealthy dynamics like constant borrowing, guilt, or resentment, eroding the trust that real friends require. I might add that this person didn't understand why they couldn't have rich friends. And the simple fact is that if you had friends that are richer than you are, you're not going to be able to afford the things that they do. You're not going to be able to afford to just on a whim decide, hey, let's just go to Cabo. Let's just fly out to Denver, or let's just, pop over to New York for the weekend. That's not what you can afford to do. You can barely afford to go to the Taco Bell that's a block away from your house and bang it out with Susie Rottencrotch and hope to get home without scratching your parts, knowing that she had something that she wanted to give you. So, with that said, let's get into today's script. So, it took everything I just said that I created. It decided to change the title because that's what ChatGPT does, even when you tell it to do something. So this is what it wrote. Dirty Secrets, How It Destroys Friendships and Leaves You Feeling Alone. That's what ChatGPT decided to use as its title for the following story. So let's get into this. So you ever feel like you're surrounded by people, but somehow you're still alone? That's what being poor does to your friendships. It twists them, turns them into something you don't even recognize. And the worst part is you don't even realize it. It's happening until it's too late. I've had to be around people when I was dirt poor. We're talking what I call soft homelessness, right? I'm staying on someone's couch. I don't have a key. I'm not certain where I'm going to sleep tomorrow, but for tonight, I have a couch to sleep on. That couch may be full of questionable stains, just like the back seat of her car, where you ask her, how do you get the stains out? And she replied, oh, I don't pay attention to the stains. And I'm like, all right, moving on. I used to think of friendships were supposed to be my escape. People who'd lift me up, make me forget how hard life is. But when you're broke, something changes. Your friends, they're struggling too. They steal your things, show up uninvited, act like poverty's some badge of honor. Is it because they don't care? Or because they're stuck in survival mode, just like you are? being stuck in survival mode, even when you're allegedly making good money, because comparatively to the people that I'm around on the average day, I make a lot more money than they do. And yet here I am living in the Roach Motel, driving a car that I'm ashamed of, and going to a job that I'm even more ashamed of. And while I'm at that job, I'm ashamed of my coworkers because they're dirt poor too. And there is no escape for them. Especially the lower class ones, the people who are there making the less than $20 paycheck, you talk to them, and I mention this all the time. It is a conversation with an NPC. There's nothing there. In fact, I showed an image of one of my what would I call this? One of the people that I'm around on a regular basis. I showed it to Gen Zero, and the first thing he said to me is, "That person looks dead inside." And I thought, that's the look of the proletariat. When you look into the eyes of a proletariat man or woman, all you notice is there is no life in there. The life has been drained out by Evil Corp. All of those times that you've been fleeced in the back room because you couldn't find a better job, they add up, and it doesn't take long before you lose that little spark that makes you human and you become a little robot. Spouting off your NPC messages, interacting at the most basic level. Like yesterday, I tried to talk to someone that works at the customer service counter at the Kroger's, and the way that she talked, I mean, it just didn't seem human. She just rattled off a bunch of phrases, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go outside now. And I left because there was no point in interacting with that person. That's what interacting with trashy people is like. They get their news they from places that aren't reputable. They click on a bunch of Instagram ads. You ask them why they buy the things that they do, and they don't know. And you wonder, do you? I was actually sitting with someone the other day, and I was like, I looked up at the screen and I saw there was Pro Ball on the screen, and I told her, it's like, you know what? It's the same thing every single time that they play Pro Ball. They're moving an object that doesn't matter from one side of a playing field to the other millions of times over the course of years, and you're just like, it doesn't change. How can anyone be entertained by this? And she just looked at me like it has some benefit, and I just thought to myself, oh my god. Anyhow, moving on. Let's see. The truth is, when you're poor, you don't get to choose your friends. You're stuck with the people you can afford. People who live like you, struggle like you, and sometimes bring you down because they don't know any better. Oh my God, boy, have I been there. That's almost every conversation that I have with Gen Zero at work. Like, I just look at him and I'm like, today we had the conversation for the a millionth time. And it's like, you're not going to make it if you're not making more than $20 an hour. And he just looked at me like, Millennial Stim, you're stupid. I'm fine. And I'm like, you've been eating ramen every day for 3 months. You are not fine. I was like, you have to tell them. You have to tell the pros that they're not fine. Like, Assassin's Creed today was being arraigned in court, and as he was being towed into the courtroom in chains like a common person, the reporters had the audacity to ask him, "Did you do it?" And he just started going off on them about how Americans are not very bright, and you're just kind of like, you know what he should have said, right? And I said this in my short earlier. I would do it again. You're already screwed. I think it was the Internet Complaint Department said today, I think he's a patsy because they found him with all those things. Any smart person would not have a manifesto on them. I'm sorry, but even I, as a non-intelligent person, would not have my manifesto on me while I was eating hash browns at McDonald's. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, moving on. I've had friends who borrowed money they knew I didn't have to lend, friends who rolled their eyes when I said no, and I've said yes too many times. Why? Because when you're poor, The only thing worse than being broke is being alone. I would have to beg to differ there. Being broke with another human being is like sitting in a pool of your own number two. You both smell it. You both know it's warm. For some reason, there's corn floating around in there with you, and you wonder where that corn came from because you haven't had a piece of corn in months. But the corn is always there, like it's part of that experience. And so you look at them, you both acknowledge that it smells bad. And I know that I use this, this analogy all the time, but today I was sitting at the gym and I got really, really bad squirts, right? And I came home, took a did my business, and then I went to the gym and I sat down and somehow there was a motor noise that was coming from the swimming pool area that was echoing into the toilet area. And every time the guy did his business, it correlated directly with the sound of that engine. So it sounded like he was making engine noises while he was going to the bathroom next to me. I knew that exact thing was going to come out of my pie hole when I sat down here to talk today because it was such a moment. It was just like, how is this really happening? How is this perfect sound with this guy sinking your battleship? Anyhow, let's move on. All right. But those friendships, they come at a cost. The cost of your peace, your boundaries, your dignity, and the cycle keeps going because poverty doesn't just drain your wallet, it drains your relationships. I would also add that it drains your soul, it drains your spirit. Poverty drains everything out of you. And the number one thing that it does to me is it drains creativity. All day long, I tried to keep my brain active and thinking about what I'm going to talk about in these videos at the end of every day. And yet we can't get past the number two jokes. Mainly because I think adding corn to anything makes everything corny and funny. All right. You see people living the life you want. Vacation, stability, homes that aren't falling apart. And you realize those aren't just dreams you can't afford. Those are the friendships you can't afford. And as I mentioned earlier, when you've been surrounded by the proletariat your whole life, especially when you work a crummy hourly job in a place that's a transient position at some hellhole that doesn't like you, you begin to realize that this isn't something that's going to be a phase. Your acquaintances as a proletariat person are permanent because other people that are poor, just like you, hang out in all the poor people places just like you do. You're not going to wake up one morning in Bali as a millionaire on YouTube talking about how great your life is, about eating healthy, about your workout routine, about meeting, well, how do I put this? Meeting someone that's truly fascinating, a person that's traveled, well read, educated to the nth degree, has had experiences beyond your imagination. That person doesn't want to talk to you. And if you, for some reason, you happen to pass by that person in real life, that person isn't going to even acknowledge that you're another human being. They're going to walk past you as if you were a human shaped pile of garbage because you are. That's why you call people trashy. Not because they act trashy, but because they embody trashiness by acting trashy. So, poverty isolates you. It makes you ashamed of where you live, of what you don't have, so you pretend. You laugh. You hang out in your car instead of inviting people over. You hope they don't notice the cracks in your life. But here's the thing. You shouldn't have to live like this. Friendship isn't supposed to feel like a transaction. It's supposed to feel like a weight. It isn't supposed to feel like a weight. Okay, so I missed part of that. I was wondering where it was going with that. I'm like, wait a minute. It's supposed to feel like it's not supposed to feel like a transaction, and it's not supposed to feel like a wait. So, what do you do when the struggle isn't just about money, but about the people around you? How do you rebuild trust, boundaries, and real connections when everything around you is falling apart? I don't have all the answers, but maybe together, this is too corny. I'm not reading this. I'm just not going to read the rest of this. The talking points for this story were abominable. This storyline was in keeping with what I wrote, of course, right? Because of this acquaintance that I have that's been feeling like this all day. Like, she can't stand the people that are within her budget because that's really what it comes down to. All of our experiences as the proletariat have to fit into the budget that we don't have. As poor people, we don't have a fund, money, a pile of money, a sack of money designated for experiencing better life, whether that's through quality people, quality vehicles, or quality living. Every aspect of our life is of the lowest quality. When you're getting it on in the back of your Promobile, you not only are you thinking about what you're doing with Susie Rottencrotch, but you're also wondering, and this is a thought that comes to mind every single time that you do this. Are the shocks going to blow out from from what I'm doing right now? And two, is the car going to start once I'm done? And number three, how am I going to get those stains out? But do you really care? Because they're right next to all the other stains where you did the exact same thing to your Promobile. You got into the back seat and you disrespected the Promobile by doing a shameful act in the back of the Promobile that you wouldn't do in your Pro housing. Because at least for me, the last thing that I want to do is be in the middle of a passionate event and I'm going to look over and see a cockroach staring at me right in the eyes asking me why. Why did you do this, Millennials team? Why did you bring Susie Rottencrotch back to my house and then defile my house by committing this act when you know that this is Roach House, not Millennials team house? Anyhow, I hope you guys found this video entertaining. Remember, this is a comedy channel. Don't take this seriously. These are real world. Oh my god, there's a cockroach climbing up the side of my leg. Oh my god. That's just what I needed to end the video. All right, I need to drink a lot of alcohol tonight, so I need to get started on that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to like, subscribe. That I couldn't have. I don't know what it is. I think I may have called them into action by mentioning them in this video, but I've got to go, and I got to go get some spray or take a shower or do something, because if they're climbing on me while I'm recording, they're climbing on me while I'm laying there going to sleep.